Okay, so your last task was to use the internet to gather a range of research that will help you learn about masks and their uses. Gathering research in this way can be a useful starting point to any project, and we call this type of research secondary research. It's secondary because it's produced by someone else. Think of it in terms of being second-hand, created by someone else and then passed on to you. This week's task is all about gathering primary research, research that's been generated by you. Taking photographs is a great way of generating high-quality primary research. Good research is the key to developing ideas for a final piece. Nowadays, you don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on expensive camera equipment to take a decent photograph. Most smartphones or tablet devices have perfectly good cameras on them, capable of taking decent images, if you know how to use them. In this presentation, we're going to look at some of the do's and don'ts of taking photographs for research purposes and hopefully help you take better quality images that you can later use to develop some creative ideas for a final piece. Number 1 is clean your lens. Look at the image on the screen of my phone. It's blurry and it lacks detail. That's because the camera lens is dirty. It's been picking up little bits of dust and stuff from the inside of my pocket. To clean it, I'm just going to use a piece of kitchen roll and gently rub the surface of the lens. There's no need to use any kind of sprays or cleaning agents on it, and certainly nothing abrasive. The last thing you want to do is scratch the surface of the lens. Once I've done that, you can see a massive improvement in the image quality on the screen. You will be expected to use research photographs to inform drawings and develop your ideas. Therefore, you want as much clear detail in them as possible. A clean lens is an important part of achieving this. Use the camera grid lines. Something that can help with composing your shots is the camera grid line function. This is easy enough to turn on. If you've got an iPhone, go to your phone settings and scroll down to the camera. Then check the box for the grid. If you go back to your camera app, you will now see the grid lines have been superimposed onto the screen. This grid will help you line up important elements in your composition. If there is a horizon line, it will help you get this level. It will also help you adhere to something called the rule of thirds. This is something we will look at a later date. Okay, so now your camera is ready to start taking good quality research photographs. But simply walking around and snapping pictures without any thought to composition or lighting will always lead to poor quality images that won't really help you later on. The word composition refers to how you set your photograph up, where you place things in the frame, how close you get, and from what angle you take the picture. The mask in this image could provide me with some really good ideas, but I've taken the photograph from too far away, the background is cluttered, and the light quality where it was taken is poor. All of this has led to a terrible photograph. Now, I say getting close to your subject is important, but don't just rely on cropping your image after taking it or zooming in. Both of these end up in pixelation, a reduction in image quality. You lose important detail. And unless you're lucky enough to own a camera with two lenses, zooming in does the same. The solution is to move the camera closer to your subject. Moving your subject close to a window or even outside will give you a much better result. Placing your subject against a neutral background will make it stand out. Shooting on a plain background can also make things easier later on if you need to edit the image in Photoshop. This image shows how I set up the mask before photographing it. It's right next to a window and on a plain sheet of white paper. It doesn't have to be white, but try to choose a colour that contrasts with whatever it is you're photographing. Another thing to remember is don't cut off important information by accident. It's fine if you're zooming in on specific detail, but images like the one shown here are not much use, especially if you decide later on to draw from the photograph. Half the mask in this photograph is missing. You are in charge of deciding what is and what isn't in the image. Pause for a moment before taking the picture and ask yourself, is this the best composition I can achieve? Okay, here you can see my final photograph of the mask. When taking it, I've been thinking about everything we've discussed in this presentation. It's nicely composed on the page, the light quality is good, and you can make out all of the important detail. Nothing is cropped out, but the image fills the frame. There's no wasted space. The background is neutral and it doesn't distract the viewer from what's important. It's an image that I could easily use going forward to develop my ideas. Here you can see the difference between the first image shot in the dark garage on a cluttered workbench and the second image shot on a white background next to a window with plenty of natural light. Hopefully you can appreciate the difference between the two and bear these points in mind when taking your own photographs. If you're going to go to all the trouble to take a photograph of an object, don't just take one, take lots. It's worth photographing the same object from a range of different angles. This will help you capture more information about the object which you can later use when developing your ideas. This is particularly useful if you're thinking about using an object to inspire a piece of 3D work. If what you are photographing is a usable piece of equipment, it might be worth photographing it in context, getting someone to show how it would be worn or how it would be used. Okay. So just to recap, before you start photographing, clean your lens. To help with composition, use the camera grid line function. Unless you've got a proper zoom lens or two lenses, don't zoom in. Get close to your subject and fill the frame. But compose your shots carefully. Don't cut off important information. Where possible, use a natural light source to light your subject. And take lots of photographs of the same subject from different angles. Okay, so for this week's task we want you to photograph and present a range of images in your Google slideshow that link to the project theme. We want you to look around your home and keep your eyes peeled when you're out and about for any objects or artefacts that you think might link to the concept of masks. There's no wrong or right answers to this. It could include safety masks, goggles, motorbike helmets, balaclavas, scarves, glasses, toys, ornaments, just about anything that you can find that might help inspire ideas later on. To give you some examples, I went round my house and the art department in school and found a whole load of stuff that I could link to the project theme. I've tried to photograph them as best I can, keeping in mind all of the things we've covered in this video. So like I said, take lots of photographs and upload them into the Google slideshow you started last week. Once you have them arranged onto slides, I want you to say something about them. Describe what it is that you photographed, and more importantly, why is it relevant to the project theme and how could it potentially help you develop your own ideas. You can see in the top right hand corner of this example, I've explained what the photograph is of and I've gone on to conduct some analysis. I've also given an opinion on how this might help me develop my ideas. At the bottom of the slide, I've explained that this mask reminds me of one a fighter pilot would wear. To reinforce this, I've found an internet image of a fighter pilot mask and I've placed it alongside. Making connections like this can be an important part of the creative process and spark new ideas for your own work.